Hello, I'm Thomas Hall, Executive Director of CleanStart, and welcome to another CleanStart Perspective. If you join our CleanStart Perspective, you know that we are supported by SMUD, ChicoStart, Fresno State, Witten Law, Baker Tilly, and River City Bank. All come together to support entrepreneurship in the Central Valley, helping early stage startups accelerate, grow, and create a virtuous cycle of them connecting and accelerating in our region. And they bring these clean start perspectives together so we can bring you together to talk about things in clean tech, about businesses that can scale, grow, and kind of bring wealth to our, community and region. Now, this discussion, we're going to be focusing on, buildings and building innovation. And one thing that has, if you've been in the building innovations place, one thing that's probably frustrated with you if you have a, technology is why isn't this great technology getting everywhere? Well, there's a reason for that. And I'm going to use kind of Clean Start's, personal example of what kind of happens when you plan to build something. So Clean Start, we have an outreach trailer. Here was our first design of what we were going to do to engage the community around this hub outreach trailer. Now, it had everything that we needed. It was really cool, engaging. But the reality is we built this smaller trailer that has this TV on the side and is great for my dog Toast. Now, that's just a kind of microcosm of kind of what happens in, I think, all kind of design processes. So today we brought in as a guest who lives at the intersection of building innovation and real world results. As a senior building performance analyst at Architectural Nexus, she's not only exploring cutting edge design, she's also asking tough questions about what actually gets built. ArchNexus has a long history of building some of the most sustainable buildings in the world. But when the reality of economics comes in, sometimes you have to make changes and figure out what the person actually wants. So today we'll be talking with Shruti about what actually gets built, how kind of technologies are looked at, and how we can take these realities of economics in and make a better, more sustainable future in buildings. So please welcome Shruti Boyle. Worley. Sorry.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Thomas, and thank you for having us here on your series today. We are very excited to talk about what we have seen so far, to talk about what we do. And the example you shared, what happens daily in an architecture firm is not very far from that reality. We start big, and somewhere we have to figure out, okay, really, what's feasible? So that was a very fun example you shared about your personal experience. And I'm gonna share, I have some slides to just give a little bit introduction on
Excellent.
Architectural Nexus, about me, and joining me today is my colleague Erica. She has a lot of great stuff to share on the Sacramento office and the really cool and great work we do here at ArchNexus. Can you see my screen?
Yep. It's not in presenting mode, but
Oh, all right. Well, thank you again, Thomas. Yeah, okay, I got the thumbs up, so looks like it's working. So we are about 95 professionals between the Salt Lake City and Sacramento office. Architectural Nexus is a design and planning firm. We provide a lot of different services. Many a times when we say design and planning firm, some people who are not into this world don't really realize that there are various different types of services that we can provide. And we have an interdisciplinary team of we have architectural staff, we have interior designers, landscape designers, some specialty expertise like visualization, sustainability, energy analysis, and regenerative operations. We have projects, not just in California and Utah, where our offices are, but in many different states. And we have a lot of accredited professionals and a lot of licensed professionals too. A little bit about myself. I'm a building performance analyst. I'm an engineer, and I have been for about 9 years now, teaming up with architects and engineers on project teams and using analysis and data-driven approach to inform goals and decisions on these projects. And so far, think I have used this approach on over 9 million square feet of various building types, commercial offices, hospitals, multifamily, higher education campus buildings, an occasional skyscraper, and single family residential. It's a variety of building types, but really the approach remains the same, no matter how big or small or how simple or complex the project is. A lot of my job involves staying up to date with what's happening in the AEC realm. That means keeping up with the policies, the codes, the technology coming out there, the tools to evaluate these technologies, and really bring the best to the table so that we can figure out what's the most feasible and sustainable and good solution for our clients and our projects.
All right. Hi. Like Shruti mentioned, my name is Erica McBride. I am the Regenerative Operations Manager for Architectural Nexus. And basically what that means is our two offices are certified living buildings. And if you're not familiar with the Living Building Challenge, it's basically just the most rigorous green building certification that's out there. So the buildings have to be net positive energy, net positive water. They have to use all good building materials. Indoor air quality plays a part, biophilic design, natural elements that go into the building. It's similar to LEED, only it's just a little more extended. So my job on a day-to-day is to maintain our two living buildings. So all the systems that are inside the buildings, which we'll talk about a little bit, that's my job, to maintain those. There aren't very many people in the world that know how to maintain a green building. It's becoming more and more prominent. Some of the pictures that you're looking at right now, this is a gray water system. This is our Sacramento gray water system. So our Sacramento office uses gray water for two things. One is toilet flushing. So it uses about 1/10 of a gallon of water, very little water for flushing. It's a vacuum flush toilet, so it uses air to move waste versus water. But the water's there for the cleanliness factor for the toilet. And then we also use a gray water for watering our living wall. We have a 30-foot living wall in the front of our office. And we utilize this water to water that wall. The water is collected through hand sinks, dishwashers, and showers that we have within our building. This is just an image that we put in here. This is the building management system that allows me to monitor and move water in our Salt Lake building from my Sacramento location. So I can use this system to turn on pumps and move water from one place to another if it's needed. The system also does move water on its own. This system is great, but it's also not without challenges. I can't be everywhere at once. This is an image of the composting toilet system that we have within our Sacramento office. So we are composting human waste in this office. This system uses a mixture of wood chips and a little bit of liquid called leachate that basically just leaches out from this system, and then we recirculate it into the system. So this is a closed black water system, and it makes dirt. So in the end, what we do is we harvest all of the compost out of the bottom, and we donate that compost to an educational farm up in El Dorado County. Our offices use natural ventilation as much as possible. That's one of the main things about the Living Building Challenge. So we have the picture you can see on the left. Those are operable bifold doors in our Salt Lake City office. And what we do there is there's a light, a window indicator light on both of the walls in the both offices. And when that light turns on, it tells the occupants that it's okay to go ahead and open up the doors and windows. And the process for that is that usually I have to send an email out that says, okay, it's okay to go ahead and open up the windows. we'll turn the HVAC system completely off, and then we use natural ventilation for as long as the temperature and humidity are optimal for that. That's just an image of the window indicator light. But what you might notice in this image is that the window indicator light is tied to temperature, humidity, and air quality. So we learned a lesson the hard way in our Sacramento location with air quality. We were opening up our windows all the time, turning off our HVAC, saying, oh yeah, we're doing such a great job. You know, we are using natural ventilation as much as possible. But what we didn't realize was we were letting all the bad air from outside into the building, then closing those windows, and then we had the bad air inside the building. So we couldn't pass an air quality test that was required for us to pass living building certification. So we had to do some trade-offs there. Is even though it's nice out and it feels nice out, if the air is bad, we can't let that in the building. So we learned that we needed to tie our Salt Lake office to air quality sensor. These are just some fun pictures. You know, part of my job is also education. So I do a lot of building tours for students. We have students from Sacramento State and other various community colleges around the area that come tour our building on a regular basis. So we host a lot of tours, and using our building as an education tool is really a big piece for us, making sure that future kids that are coming into this industry understand that buildings can be designed differently and they can be operated differently. We don't have to just go with a box that has a couple of windows on it. Buildings can be different and be a place where people want to work. The picture on the far right is a picture of me using out of the box thinking, I guess, cleaning solar panels while it's raining. So I go up there when it's raining and I squeegee our 324 solar panels. I don't finish them all in one day, but it's free water and that's the way we do it. Picture on the left is me inside of a rainwater cistern. So, you know, we talk about building systems. Our Sacramento location has 10,000 gallons of rainwater that we utilize for exterior irrigation. So we're not putting potable water on our plants. This piece that I'm going to get had fallen off. That's an overflow piece. So what that does is it allows the system to turn off when there's enough water inside the cistern. So we're not overflowing all the rainwater out onto the ground. The only way we could get it was to go in and get it. So these systems are good and they're meaningful, and they make a difference within, you know, our broader community ecosystem, but they're not without challenge as well.
Yeah, and talking about challenges, I think a great segue of all the fun and challenges Erica was mentioning is that all these fun and challenges are there during operation, but they start kind of early. It's a very it's a very real thing. Every project, every design project, there are challenges every day from day one. And I think I believe my most important work comes in when I can rely on the experts around me, like Erica, to really understand the challenges of future and find a viable solution for the project teams and clients today. I'd say it's one of the most difficult things to do to balance ambition with reality, balance budgets with goals. And we have been using all the things we have in our toolkit, the experience, the technology, the all the various experts to really understand how to find that sweet spot and the balance. And we really think that there is a process to get every project there. And we like to think that simulations or analysis or data-driven approach to designing the buildings is it's a really great way to really talk about some of these challenges early on before they become a reality and really try to solve a problem. And I think it all these problem solving comes with really bringing the entire team together, discussing the solutions as a team, and continuing evaluation and evolution in what we bring out and put out in the built environment. And my images don't look as fun as some of the images Erica shared, but this is what my world looks like. A lot of simulation, a lot of results. I chose the coolest looking graphics because I didn't want to share the boring tables and numbers and graphs, which are also very much part of my daily work. Really, all the work I do, the analysis, these results, they ultimately, my goal is really ultimately turning them into actionable steps, something that really gets the entire team closer to making a decision they would have otherwise not been able to make if following the conventional pathway. And with with all these advanced technologies coming out every day, and the project's getting more complex every day, the code's getting more complex, the goals getting more complex, it is so important that we utilize everything we have under our belt to make a sound decision. And some of the examples I have thrown in here is like some of the energy models, some of the glare and daylight simulation, those spears, the fisheye images, some CFD analysis, and macro level analysis, micro level analysis. We sometimes go down deep into just one tiny space, understanding what's happening, how is the window impacting the conditions, how is changing the insulation impacting the conditions inside. Is it really helping? We look at all different aspects of the building to figure out what's going to be the best solution.
Well,
And
I
I
think that, yeah, I think that's a great summary of kind of where it started, loaded me up with a lot of questions. So I guess my first kind of question is, you talk about bringing a lot of teams together, the architects, the engineers, the owners, and I think of the owners, they're kind of the economic buyers on this. So what kind of, I guess, translation or communication goes, between, I guess, I can imagine the architects and the engineers and their kind of communications, and then going and taking that to the economic buyer, the person who's going to be financing the project. What type of, I guess communication changes end up happening in there that enable you to communicate effectively with that economic buyer?
Yeah, and that's a great question. We have experienced that there is no straight one way to do that. Every client is different, every client wants a different language. Even though ultimately it's all about the bottom line, there are a lot of other priorities and I guess goals that we try to incorporate into our language. So I'd say my answer is we adapt our language based on the client we are dealing with what is the priority. And most of the times we try to look at the feasibility of the solutions or the design we are putting out in the way that, okay, this might, because we're also trying to find a solution that meets the budget along
Hmm.
with the ambitious
Yeah.
goals. So we try to look at it lot of, I'm going to talk about the micro stuff first and then
Okay.
maybe try to zoom out a little. Take, for example, this different systems. There are so many different systems, and you would say geothermal is so efficient. Why don't we see it everywhere?
Mhm.
Why is it not a norm? Because it's
That's a good
expensive.
question. Oh,
Yeah,
it's okay.
it's because it's expensive. It's expensive day one, even though sometimes the life cycle cost assessments might tell you that over the course of 20 years, it's going to be cheaper for you. But where does the client bring that extra dollar today? That's the
Hmm.
toughest challenge. So many clients we come across, they have such desires to do the best, the right thing. but it's just really hard to find the upfront cost that is needed today to incorporate all these advanced technologies. And California is doing something really cool. There is a grant by California Energy Commission, which kind of tries to solve this problem. That grant specifically is giving, I guess, funding to project teams to incorporate all these technologies today, day one. So, you're no longer fighting for where do we bring that extra amount from? We are giving you the funds. And then prove over the course of time how beneficial it was. And the, I guess, like for any technology, the more the demand is, the more there is competition to make it cheaper and better. And it just drives the market to a place where it becomes a more feasible technology or something that can be really thought of day one.
What's a technology that, in a sustainable energy sense that you saw go from, this is, I wouldn't say fringe, but not mass adopted technology that, you're not seeing buildings pick up to being basically used everywhere. And what would you think or identify as, I guess, the tipping point or the thing that made that technology really just start clicking and scaling?
Awareness, I'd say. There's so much good stuff out there, but not much awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think platforms like these, what you're doing here, bringing all these different people from different areas to talk about the work they do, I think that's creating awareness. And I think what we have noticed is most of the times there are some really simple technologies or systems that can be incorporated that just don't get incorporated because either the design teams are not aware of it, the client has never been aware of it, and the teams have never put in the effort to educate, to really build in that confidence that, hey, this is simple. We can do this. And a great example would be both of our offices, the Salt Lake City offices and Sacramento office. We use this really simple system, a really small relay that sits on top of all of our electrical panels. And it is simply connected to our alarm system, the building security alarm system. All it does is when Erica or anyone else, we turn on the alarm on the building, it sends a signal to that relay saying that shut off power to all these non-critical panels. And that's energy saving. That's thinking out of the box, thinking how can simple little things make a big impact. And most of the times when we bring this up on projects, teams are not aware of it. They're like, what is this again? Well, the code must be covering something. The energy codes do a great job. California's energy codes do a great job of really stretching and pushing the boundaries. But sometimes we can think a little beyond, utilize really simple stuff, which is simply missing because there hasn't been much awareness, and just make it part of the conventional normal design.
Mm-hmm. So on these things, like how do you kind of evaluate, I guess, the return? We have a lot of things, we're like, okay, this offsets a lot of carbon, this improves, quality of life, but there's also kind of the economic return to it. And, a lot of building, people who are doing a lot of construction buildings, their return is when they exit the project, right? So it's that sale price. So something that's, a 30-year return for the might not be in their, top of mind. How do you kind of, I guess, communicate return to the economic buyers of like this new technology?
That's a tough question. That's a really tough question. And I say that because we are still trying to find a good answer for it.
Mhm.
We are trying a lot of different things and really trying to figure out what hits and what works. And it's still work in progress. What
Or
has
what
helped?
what's a big success you've had with maybe a customer where you're like, hey, we were able to speak effectively to this customer and just nailed it.
Let me think. Erica, if you have an example, jump in. I'm
Yeah,
thinking.
we had a client that we did a library for in Salt Lake City, Daybreak Library. And originally they did not want to put solar on their library. They're a library, so it's, county funded. They're like, no way, we can't afford solar. There's no way. We did an analysis for them, and without even really presenting it to them, we ended up putting solar in the project within budget that they weren't even aware of until later. And now they have a big, huge solar array on their building that was paid for within their budget. And they're a net zero library. They're the only net zero library in the state of Utah. And we've done countless presentations and countless tours. People have weddings at that library. Like, it's an amazing library. And originally, they did not want to hear anything about solar. And then when we just kind of snuck it in there, they were all
That's a
excited
great,
about
yeah,
it.
that's a great example. And I guess the language that speaks, I feel if you can present a project that fits within the budget, sky is your limit. And so really the burden of that really falls on the design team then to be innovative and efficient in what they prioritize. And I'm going to continue to take the example Erica used, that library. We knew we wanted to do something more with it, and we knew we cannot go ask for more. We have
Mhm.
this budget, we have this timeline, and we need to deliver something extraordinary. Can we do it? Because that's the case. I think if day one we can convince that this building had all these great features and it's still not hurting your economic equation,
Mhm.
everyone would like it. It's a win-win for everyone. The design team, the client, the planet. I'd say our process was very unique too, how we approached it. And that's what we are trying to do on most of our projects, is when we think about 10 different things that need to be done on a project, we try to figure out the priorities. What's going to have the biggest impact? Can we reduce something so that that budget can be taken and put somewhere else? For example, this library Erica mentioned, we could have chosen to put a lot of glass in a lot of places on the building to, bring in more daylight and have this feeling that, oh, you're connected with outdoors. But we instead chose to put that glass on specific strategic locations, which still meets the intent of connecting to outdoors and having those views and bringing in more daylight. And all that extra money that was saved was put somewhere else, for example, to the solar. And we found similar efficiencies throughout all the systems. So I'd say it's a systems approach. It's you have to think with all the systems coming together, and you have to have all the team members putting their brain power together and really working as a unit to find these trade-offs and synergies to figure out what can go and what can stay and what can increase. So I think that's a great example.
Yeah, I like how that highlights that it's a really a collaborative effort. Because I was thinking, when was the last time you bought a car and they delivered something more, and they're like, well, we were able to make something more fit in your budget. And but kind of on a similar thing is that you have a lot of things that you trade off, and these trade-offs have, can have some pretty big impacts. And one thing that I noticed watching, Erica's portion of the presentation as kind of the building manager was, getting down in there and in the rainwater cistern and fishing things out. And if I was building a building or a building manager that might have input on it, and they're like, all right, so you're going to have to crank this thing to auger the gray and the black water, that seems like a whole lot of extra work for a building manager that may or may not have a background in a whole lot of stuff. And if I'm building a building, I might be like, okay, I might save some here, but if I have to pay a whole bunch for, a bunch of building managers, that doesn't appeal to me. Is there, how do you balance that portion of it?
Yeah, that's always been an interesting thing to look at as well. So I don't have a background in building management. I had a passion of sustainability and kind of fell into building management. I think that oftentimes what you have to find there is a passion in somebody, but that is a legitimate concern that we hear a lot from people. We're working with a client right now who has a lot of building managers and maintenance people because it's a very large campus type place. We
Mhm.
can't really say what it is, but and they constantly hear from their maintenance and their building management crew, we don't want new technologies because that's more effort for us to learn something. And that's more effort for us to maintain it. And it's more effort, but ultimately you have to kind of find that balance between we're willing to provide building management and maintenance crews new technologies that will actually help better the the building or the place that they're working in, but also you have to give them a seat at the table from the beginning. So this is what we're trying to accomplish. Here's the overarching goal, the why are we doing this, why are we changing this, why are we doing something innovative, and get them to buy in on that, and then tell them, get them to kind of understand that the bigger why is more important than them not knowing how to operate something, because you'll learn eventually how to operate something that's a new technology. And a lot of these new technologies are pretty simple actually, and a lot of times, I mean, they have gray water systems out there now that maintain themselves. And so it's really something that you just have to give them a seat at the table from the beginning, and you really have to get them to buy in on the why. Why are we changing this? And then I think you'll ultimately fall into a building manager or a maintenance person that really understands that the importance of changing something.
100% agree. Our most successful projects are where the facility managers have been part of the project from day one.
Yeah, and I think it's a space for innovation as well because, you know, there are these, of course, can be kind of, hopefully innovated around on. I know we have in our audience here Diana Eastman, who has, a building technology that I'm sure earlier she was, nodding heavily along with the how do you communicate this to people. But how do you guys discover, I guess, new technologies or new innovations? Shruti, you mentioned keeping up with everything is half of your job. How do you stay up to date and find, new technologies that someone like Diana might have and incorporate it in things?
I'd say I have a lot of resources. I try to jump on as many diverse group of discussions I can, read a few articles here and there from a few different magazines, try to go to conferences, chat with vendors. Really, if I come across a building or a team that has tried something, really picking their brain on how the process was, what did they use. Really, I think just keeping up the communication channels open and really absorbing whatever you can get your hands on. That's the way I've been doing it so far. And the biggest and the most valuable lessons come from talking to people who have utilized these systems and technologies on other projects. I think those are the most valuable ones because you learn about the challenges and you learn valuable lessons on how you can do that better.
Hmm. It's kind of like influencers or advocates in the area. Are there newsletters or influencers that you recommend people that want to stay up to date follow?
Oh, I don't know if I'll have a list going on right off the top of my mind right now because I have a huge list.
Well, how about this?
But
What
some
is
of
something, if I come across someone who says, like, I want to talk to you about buildings and I'm an expert in buildings, what are, maybe three questions or three things that we should check to verify, is this person bringing you good information or are they just trying to, get you to click? How do you sort who's giving you good information and who's, maybe stringing you along for something else?
oh, That's a tricky situation. I'm glad we have never been in one of such situations. I wouldn't say there is um like an answer to that or like
Mhm.
just a silver bullet to that, how to tackle that. Sometimes you do get recommendations and you do get swayed into technologies which turn out to be disastrous decisions. That happens. And it's just, I think if someone is coming along with you with a very ambitious technology and you have doubts, I'd say look up, ask for references, go look at projects they have done, talk to the people who are operating those facilities and managing those systems, and learn as much as you can and really figure out for yourself if this recommendation coming from X person is viable and good or bad. I think we lost Thomas.
Yeah, I would also say to that question, that has on a smaller scale happened to us in the Sacramento location where we trusted what we were being told by the vendor of our living wall and them telling us how it should or shouldn't be maintained and how it will never need maintenance and it's the easiest thing in the world to maintain, and that ended up not being the case. And I think in hindsight, had we done a little more research rather than just going with the lowest bidder, we would be in a different situation. Our living wall in Sacramento, we've been in this building for almost 10 years, and we've had to redo our living wall about 3 times, 2.5 times. And plants are expensive and it's a 30-foot wall and it's not cheap to redo. And so I think getting those recommendations would have made more of a difference for us, for sure. He's back.
Yeah, there's Thomas. So what's the highest return opportunity
Excellent
that,
conversation without me there.
Yeah.
But
I had
let's
a question.
go for it.
yeah, I was just wondering, you know, in all the stuff that you've done working with clients, anything jump out at you as, this is a really high return opportunity that most people are overlooking or won't pick up on. Have you seen something like that? Where are the overlooked opportunities here we're missing?
My opinion, well, Shruti probably has a different opinion than me. One of the biggest opportunities that I think people are missing is capturing rainwater for irrigation. Not a lot of buildings do it, and they would rather, and that's because water is kind of an undervalued resource, in my opinion. But ultimately, overall, if you're only irrigating your landscape with rainwater, assuming that it's feasible, you don't have like a giant like football field or something like that, it makes more sense to do that versus paying an extravagant water bill for watering
Well,
just a small amount of plants.
I agree with the sentiment there.
Yeah.
Although I would add to this that working out the economics on anything that is related to water is such a tough thing. Our water is so cheap. And when clients come back asking for what's the return on investment, it's not gonna pay out.
Never
It's
gonna
not
pay
about the
out.
return on investment. And so trying to figure out a way, I think, as the policies get more stricter, we're seeing a shift in clients and projects' willingness to explore and entertain these ideas. Even if they don't pan out, at least there is an element of education happening, and that's the first step. I think this willingness to get themselves educated about the possibility is a great first step. Eventually, we'll get to a place where it won't be just about being aware of it, and it will be more about willingness to incorporate in the project. But it has to start somewhere.
What about technology? So California, it sounds like one of the big drivers of the change is kind of rules, codes, and regulations. And California, I guess, is on the frontier of rules, codes, and regulations often. How often does like a technology that gets kind of enforced here through code translate to other places and being used other places? Since you guys work across, the West, is there something that, a California code made a change in another state just because it validated something?
So internally, what we are seeing, I'm going to continue on the topic of water. There is so much value in really not using potable water for flushing, or, using rainwater collected for irrigation, or really designing to your environment and designing to the region, the eco region the project is in. And a lot of that was, I think, started and pioneered by the strict codes in California. And I guess that internally gives us a lot of tools and information and experience to translate whatever we have learned in California, because we have to do it there, to other projects here if we see an opportunity. Trying to think of an example.
I think an example would be like, so we have composting toilet system here in our Sacramento office in California. The city of Sacramento was very helpful and totally on board with what we wanted to do with a composting toilet system. However, when we worked on a project in Moab, Utah, they were not as understanding of a composting toilet. They were very scared of that. And so one thing we had to go through in order to get that permitted in Utah was to test our compost and the leachate or the black water that comes out of the compost here in Sacramento. We had to run tests on that and then submit that to the Utah Board of Health in order for them to permit that composting toilet system there in Utah. But now it's done, it's been permitted there. So that can be used as a case study for other examples in Utah and other places in order to say, hey, look, this isn't a scary technology. Yes, it's not well known, but more than likely you've used a composting toilet anytime you've gone to a national park. It's just not in a green building and it's underground, and so you don't see it. But they exist. So it's not scary as people think.
Yeah, and another thing that comes to my mind is electrification. California has aggressive policies to reach certain level of electrification and decarbonization, and that's really setting the stage and really helping us as design team members to use that as an example on projects in other jurisdictions and states where there aren't such aggressive policies. Take, for example, kitchen electrification. First time Berkeley banned natural gas, it was just the first of many jurisdictions that followed suit. And now there are so many experiences and blogs and just like verification of the fact that electrification of a kitchen helps in more than one ways. And that was a change that was pushed by a policy, but then in other states where that policy is still a far-reaching goal, it can be still used as an example. That scary thing that is scary here, but is being tackled in some other region. It is setting an example.
All right. Well, as we kind of come up on the hour now, I want to hear kind of from both of you what excites you the most about, the future of green buildings or green building sustainability?
You go
Yeah,
first.
I think what excites me most is innovation. There is endless innovation happening, and just this fierce competition that is going to bring the best of the best out in the green building realm. And that makes it all much more easy.
Yeah, I think For me, the most exciting thing is when we tour students through that are in programs for architecture or engineering or whatever the case is. And we have them come through our building and we're showing them these technologies that are they're off the shelf technologies. They're not like anything custom. They're just, technologies that exist out in the world already. And they get excited. Like, we have solitubes in our office that are just these light tubes that come down from the roof, and all they do is reflect light to the ground. And every time someone comes in here and we say, there's no artificial lighting on in here, they're like, wow, that's so cool. That's so exciting. Like, your office is so nice, all like daylit and stuff. And I think just them seeing the technologies that we have and understanding that like they're not scary or hard or whatever, and they can go in any application really.
Yeah, I think that's worthy on all fronts. I do want to, before we head out, I want to address a question that we got from Diana Eastman. At CleanStart, we support a lot of innovative companies with new technologies. What's the best way for an entrepreneur that might have a new technology to connect with an architecture firm? How do
Yeah.
they, connect with you to share their things without,
Yep.
going overboard?
It's really so simple. We have vendors that come in, a lot of vendors that come in for interiors like furniture, and sometimes occasionally we'll get exterior stuff like, weatherproofing and whatever, but never have we had a vendor come in and show us their new technology. Never have we had a vendor come and say, here's this new bifacial solar panel that we're, showcasing, or here's, some fun little things that you can put in a window that are solar and they change and they have patterns. Like, we haven't had vendors come in and do lunch and
Yeah.
learns or even just drop-ins to the office and bring a treat or something like that. They're always interior finishes, and we're tired of that, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like,
And I
we need
think
technology.
the interiors world does it so well. There are always new samples coming in, always great stuff coming in, which is lacking when it comes to technology. I think we would want
Yes.
vendors to come in and show us the great stuff they have. We had to go out of our way and do all that research all by ourselves, inviting people to talk about the technology when we worked on the California Energy Commission grant project.
Mhm.
We just reached out and asked them to, okay, we are interested in this. Can you talk about it more? Show us how it works. Give us this data. And we try to incorporate into our analysis and made sense of what works out. But that was all the hard work on our end. If we want those technologies to become mainstream, this should be the hard work they should be putting in.
Yeah, like, we have
Just
people
come talk to us.
walk into our office all the time. Hey, I want to do like a 2 o'clock drop-in and I'll bring cookies. And can you have your architects come and like listen to my spiel? Yes, always. Like, we'll
Yeah.
always accommodate that kind of stuff.
We,
And
So what I'm
yeah,
hearing
an
is I
example
should get a
is
bunch of entrepreneurs, get a bunch of cookies, and show up and have kind of a road show with you guys, right?
yeah,
yes,
so
yes.
another good example is so we were really interested in understanding the electrochromic glazing technology. We really
Mhm.
wanted to understand it because we often get clients who want to put glass in the most undesirable location possible. And we want to put out a good design, which is not going to be uncomfortable, and we don't want people to be walking around in lobbies with sunglasses and hats on. And we were aware that there is such a technology, but we had no exposure. So we called the vendors. We asked for them to come to our office, replace this section so that we can test it out ourselves. We can experience how this entire technology works and if it's good, bad, what are the challenges. And so we go out of our way to reach out to all these technologies to test them and understand before we can really put it out on projects. And I think one less hurdle for us would be if those technologies came to us.
Yes, agreed.
All right. I think that's a good place to end on. I think that's some really good information.
Diana
Um,
has a question.
oh,
Her question
right.
is there a best practice method for a technology to introduce itself to an architecture firm?
Yeah, that's
That
what
was the
we
one I
just
just asked.
answered. Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. That was the one. Did we answer your question?
Yes, I'll give you a ring.
Come
I,
by
I can imagine
anytime.
who's going to bring you cookies soon.
Yeah, what kind do you like?
Any sugar. The architects eat any sugar. So
All right. Well, with that, I want to thank Shruti and I want to thank Erica, who was a pleasure to talk with you guys today. I think it gave us a good perspective on what's happening out there and some of the difficulties that you guys face in trying to scale these green technologies and make people understand that their benefits. I want to thank our supporters, SMUD, Chico Start, Fresno State, Witten Law, Baker Tilly, and River City Bank, and invite people who, if you do have an idea, to come check out our CEO Crash Course info session on August 14th at 9 a.m. It's like a perspective, but we're going to talk about our accelerator. Also, later we've got the Deep Dive Accelerator Pitch Night in October and Grow Tech Fest in Chico on November 6th through 7th. So hopefully see you all there and see you at a future Clean Tech Perspective. Thank you for attending and have a good day. Bye, everybody.